my pleasure to call on Meredith Gibbs. It's a real honor for me to have Meredith. It's very long, but I'm reading one little.
Life will never be the same when Colorado meets the East Coast. Each one hopefully will learn from the other. So little did I know when I set the topic for this talk that it would only be a week after the terrible tragedy in India. This question really, does the soul choose its destiny before birth? So there has to be some premises that we need to set up in order to have some sense of what's happening in life, what life is all about. That there is a difference between spirit and matter is very clear. More and more people in the world are becoming aware that there's a spiritual essence behind all physical reality. About, I think now it would be 40 years ago, I was in a house on December 25th that burned down in the middle of the night. My ex-husband and I, we had some tenants who weren't Jewish, and they had a Christmas tree that they left on all night that got short at 1:25 a.m. Before and after all the shock and the sadness, there was a moment I had, a moment of euphoria, when I realized that was really, really valuable in my life could never be taken away by anything physical, by any physical destruction. And that really, really changed my life forever. And hopefully nobody has to go through that personally. But when you hear about it, read about it, know somebody, unfortunately, Rahman al-Islam, that has gone through that kind of experience, so like the Rebbe used to say, "V'hachai yitein el libo," the living person should take it to heart and really go deeper into understanding what life is all about. In Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of the Fathers, we're taught, Al korchecha ata chai, against your will you live, Val korchecha ata met, and against your will you die. Yeah. So this itself seems to set up a conflict, a contradiction really, both logically and practically. How can it be that you're living against your will and you're dying against your will? And if everything is against your will, because life and death basically cover all the bases, then how can it even be a question that your soul has any kind of a choice in its destiny? So this is the kind of context that I want to frame to set up my talk. We know also from a few Torah portions ago that Rivka Imenu, our matriarch Rivka, was pregnant with two twins. And Chazal, the rabbis tell us that when she went by a place of idolatry, something would move inside of her. When she went by a place of monotheism, something moved inside of her. So she kind of couldn't figure it out, like what kind of crazy mixed up kid went to, according to Chazal, she went to seek out God's input. Otherwise, we should be able to do that. But she went to Shem, she went to the son of Noach, who was the octogenarian of that era, and she was told, there are actually two nations inside of you. So you don't have one crazy mixed up kid, you have one person, you have two people with different kinds of tendencies. But in a way, in Hasidus, it's brought down that we all are like Rivka. We all are pregnant with different tendencies inside of us. Of course, we're taught in Tanya that there are two souls inside of us, the animal soul and the divine soul. And they are in conflict. So wherever we look in the world, in life, we see a dynamic of conflict. So, in a way, this helps us give some kind of clarity because, or I would say reassurance, because if there's conflict everywhere and there's one God, this is really the ultimate question that Kabbalists deal with, that all of Kabbalah literature deals with. How do you get from the oneness of God to a finite world? And in that finite world, there's competing dynamics, there's competing forces that are always, so to speak, at war with each other. So that's what I'm saying. We have some consolation because if we do believe in God, if that's our rock bottom faith, then that belief in God also entails a belief in oneness. So there has to be an overriding principle that can resolve all kinds of conflicts. And this is really the key foundation of the Messianic vision, that there will come a realization and enlightenment, a force in the world that will do what's popularly called nowadays conflict mediation on all levels, both within ourselves, within our families, within our communities, and the world. So that holographic model of the possibility of conflict resolution really gives us a perspective that, on one hand, we have to look at the conflicts and recognize that they're there, but there has to be from the beginning of creation a formula, so to speak, a perception, a way of looking at things that can resolve all kinds of conflict. And this is, I think, why it says, Chazal teach us that right in the beginning of creation, V'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the earth. And the rabbis say, Zeh ruach shel Mashiach, this is the spirit of Mashiach. So right there at the beginning of creation, we're taught also, the Talmud teaches us in Megillah that the Hashem creates the refuah, the healing, kodam lamaka, before the blow. So leads us into that idea that somehow that oneness of God and the oneness of the Torah and the oneness of the Jewish people will permeate all of existence. And that's the beginning, and that's the kind of end in history. And it's only this little middle part for 6,000 years or so that is giving us trouble. You'll be safe. Let's talk now about the soul. What is the soul? How does that fit in with God and with creation? So going back to Bereshit again, the very first word of the Torah, Bereshit, usually is translated in the beginning, but it actually means, according to the rabbis, for the sake of something that's called Reshit, for the sake of something that's called beginning, did Hashem create the world. So what is this Reshit? There's a basic machloket, a basic debate in the opening midrash of the Oral Torah. So one opinion says for the sake of the Torah, because the Torah in many places is called Reshit, is called beginning. Another opinion is Bishvil Yisrael, for the sake of Israel, that's also called the beginning. And the midrash puts it in the words, Yisrael Allah b'machshava. Israel came up in God's thought in the beginning. But the rabbis who are looking at these two midrashim say, well, you can't have two beginnings at the very same moment. If you're talking about a beginning, or you already, this is what the rabbis say, the Torah starts with the letter Bet, not Aleph, because Bet is the second letter, and Bet is the number 2. It already represents duality. So as soon as you have creation, you have duality, because you have a creator and you have creation. So the question is, what was the first? Kind of like with Rivka, who came up first? Who's on first? Having Costello. Both can't be on first. So which is it? And finally, the Midrash says something very startling. The Midrash has a resolution at the end and says, Machshavtan shel Yisrael kadmo l'chol davar. The thought of Israel precedes everything. And another kind of proof text that supports this idea is that even before Hashem began creation, another mind-blowing statement that's brought in the Talmud, Mi nimlach, with whom did God consult? So we know in Bereshit, when God is about to create Adam, to create the first human beings, he says, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man, let us make Adam. So who's the us? And even Rashi says this caused a whole uproar among the people who thought the Torah was supposed to promote monotheism. Who's the us? Many opinions. One is God and his angels, God and all the different forces of creation. But the other opinion is with the souls of the righteous.